All right, I hope that's good and clear for you all. Welcome, this is Andrew Broussard, another watercolor tutorial for you. This one is based off of a photo by Miss Barbara, who is a member of a Facebook page, Ron Ranson Disciples. On that page, a lot of us use the Hake brush. We paint fast and loose. We focus on mainly on landscapes and whatnot. We have a lot of beginners, a lot of experienced people. We have a great group of people on there, and it's fantastic. And I highly recommend that you all join. A lot of the people that I mentioned in my other videos are members of that art group, as well as some of the other content creators. So this photo Miss Barbara had put up this morning kind of as a challenge. I believe it is a lighthouse on the West Coast. And when I woke up this morning and looked at it, I was like, I've painted that before. And I had painted a lighthouse from Maine that my friend had sent me. The picture, not the lighthouse. And with that picture, I compared it to this one. And I was like, oh my God, it's almost the same thing. So I don't know if it was just a common theme with lighthouses for them to look in this way and to have those buildings around it and whatnot. But I pulled up these pictures from a year ago that I had painted for them based off of a lighthouse from the Northeast. And it looks very similar. So after about a year, like I said, Miss Barbara had posted one, and this is from the West Coast. And with her permission, she put it as a challenge. I said, can I also film the process of it? And she said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So this is going to be my attempt at a lighthouse. And it should make an interesting tutorial for y'all. I'm going to set this up in the background so I can see it. The current setup doesn't allow me to really have it alongside with the pan for you guys to see as well. So I'm taking my Hake brush and I am saturating my quarter sheet of Stonehenge aqua paper. And then we'll play around and come up with some ideas. All right, so let me wet this. There we go. We should be good. So we let it soak. We'll talk about what we have going on within this palette and whatnot. I'm going to grab a soda. We are going to see. I'm going to try to stay within the Ron Ranson palette for this. And I'm using a butcher block much like he would. And we'll talk about the colors, and some I'll have to add to as we go down the line. So I have a light red oxide, alizarin crimson. I'm going to skip over the Venetian red. I have burnt umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, lemon yellow, which I'm going to have to rely on for the front green foliages. We have ultramarine and Payne's gray. So that's kind of the basic Ron Ranson palette. I think burnt sienna might be an add-on. I'm not sure. You might be able to mix those from two others. I'll have to look into that. And sometimes with sky paintings, at least in the book that he had put on Painting Skies, he had added, I think, cerulean blue and maybe another color, but I think we're going to avoid those. So let me get this all set up. Now, an interesting thing that came to mind was the horizon itself. Whenever I had painted that, I did different views. They had photos from different views. And in one painting, I had taped the horizon. Another one, I didn't. And that was a thing that me and David Usher had a conversation about, was do we let the water blend into the sky? Do we let it blend into the air and whatnot? That was a conversation we had over a year ago, and it still kind of sticks with me. I think he was more of a fan of letting it blend into the sky, and not having such a crisp horizon. I'm not sure which way I'll do it. Maybe I might do multiple paintings of it. I don't know. Now that sky is really light, so I'm going to go really light raw sienna. And I'll slowly start putting things together. It's kind of the horizon picture. The horizon line's about here in the picture. Push it up a little bit. We'll grab a little bit of ultramarine. I'm just going to be very timid with this. I don't even know if the ultramarine is even showing up. That's how light I'm going. Now, as always, you all are welcome to follow along. If you would like, I have a link below for my Patreon account. If you'd like to subscribe, that will help pay for art supplies. If you don't want to or can't, that is totally fine. I will not be offended. Also, feel free to like and subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. And I try to address questions that take place. What else? Also, I have a link down below for Etsy if you would like to purchase anything that I paint. I have some oils up there as well. I just haven't put any of the pen and ink drawings up there yet. I need to do that. Now, we have that water line, the horizon back here. I go very light with it, and kind of just so I can plan out where I'm going with things. The water, the foam, is the brightest thing in the picture. So I'm thinking I'm going to leave this be and maybe just do a quick dry brush or something like that in that spot. The water is a darker blue than the sky. And we'll have the lighthouse right about here in the picture. There's going to be a landmass that we're going to have to come out to here. It's going to come around, so we have the rocks face like this, and then we'll have the green up in here. I don't usually do any pencil marks on my paintings or anything like that, but if that's something you want to do, is mark out those spots, that's perfectly fine. Some people utilize the pencil marks as a part of the painting itself. I was reading that Whistler, an oil painter, he would have pencil marks that would show through and whatnot, which was cool. Okay, so now the rocks. If I go raw sienna and ultramarine, I feel like I do get a grayish from that. My ultramarine is Da Vinci brand, as is my raw sienna. So I'm just going to put that in. I'm going to try to put vertical strokes in order to give me the idea of what's taking place, that the vertical of the cliffs. Now right now it's wet and wet, so they're kind of just going to float around, but I'll go over it and get more defined with that later on. There's an object here. This has some interesting contours to it. I can't go too crazy with the contours right now. Like I said, wet and wet. Building will be right here. Raise this up some. This comes up here and goes off the edge. So we have some horizontal, and there's green grass, and we have this building here. The building I'm mainly going to put in and the lighthouse with the rigger brush, so I'm not even going to really touch that space. And it went light enough right there that I really don't have to worry about painting over anything. You could have pencil marked that out and wet around everything. That's an option. You could actually cut a piece of masking tape into the shape that you want to block out and put that there as well. Masking fluid and whatnot. Whatever way you're comfortable with doing. Let's get a green for the foliage in the foreground. This is lemon yellow. My lemon yellow always gets dirty on my palette. I can't keep it clean no matter what. The lemon yellow is Cotton brand. This is with ultramarine. It's getting a little muddy. I might have to get some fresh lemon yellow in there. Okay, so I'm just going to feed in this foreground of greens. So there's branches and whatnot. And I'm going to have to pay attention to the distinctiveness of the foreground. I do these videos live, and somebody said hello. Hello, how you doing? I'm just doing a painting of a lighthouse. It's a challenge for one of the art groups that I'm in, and I guess a lot of people are going to try their hand on it. It's a photo of a lighthouse from Oregon. Okay, so to recap so far, wet and wet, a little bit of raw sienna in the sky, a little bit of ultramarine in the sky. There are no clouds in this photo whatsoever. If you wanted to, you can lift some clouds out with a paper towel to make that interesting. Down here, there's the surf that's taking place. Once again, I could potentially lift out right there to get some of the brightest whites, but what I'm thinking is a quick dry brush effect. The horizon line of water is bluer in comparison, so I need to darken that up. We did some gestural marks here with some ultramarine and raw sienna, just to kind of put that shape in. We can't really shape it out too much. This is the cliff edge, and the building will go right there. Get a little bit more ultramarine. You can use the Hake brush, or you can use the rigger, whatever one you're more comfortable with for this line. Like I said, this is a line that me and David Usher had talked about in the past, whether we let it blend into the sky or whether we put tape down and get a crisp edge. Either way is fine. It's just personal preference. This will give, I guess you could say, more of an atmospheric effect rather than having that clean edge. But some people like the clean edge, so it's personal preference. And in addition to that, you can, if you do tape, when you pull tape away, you're gonna have to be really careful since it's in the middle of the painting. Otherwise, you might get a tear in it. I use masking tape if I tape anything, and you could remove some of the stickiness by putting it on clothes and whatnot, and that'll be less likely to tear. And you can also, if you have it along the edges, tear away from the painting when you pull it off. Let's since we're wet and wet, let's feed in some darks. Let's grab burnt sienna into that ultramarine. So burnt sienna ultramarine going to give you a darker kind of neutral. You could also mix the burnt umber and ultramarine and get that dark gray as well. And these are going to be for the darker areas, the shadow. So it's the side that is facing us of these cliffs. So the lighter side are going to catch a little bit of that light coming from here. The darker side facing us is going to be the least amount of light that is caught. So just feed it in a few spots. It's going to disperse. We're going to have to probably lift and then we're gonna have to kind of model some stuff. For the far distant, you could leave it like super soft if you want. However, due to I'm losing the word today a lot. The clarity of the lighthouse and the distance that it is with those rocks, you would have clarity with both, but you could take an artistic license of softening that to bring the eye even more over there. Okay, so those are going to be here. We have that inlet that comes in, so I'm going to lift right there. With watercolor, a lot of people think that you cannot erase. You can. Just use a paper towel to lift, or you can re-wet that area and lift as well. Also, paper towels give us beautiful textures. I'm just trying to avoid doing that in this one. And if you start getting a back run up here, you can just lift above the horizon. In fact, that's what we'll do. Okay. And that gives us that whiteness of the paper, the whiteness of the sky. It's a clear, beautiful day. Now, if you're watching, let's grab a little more of that darker green. You can get a green with Payne's gray and lemon yellow as well. It'll be a darker green. That's because on the color wheel, black will sit more towards the blue side, and Payne's gray in and of itself has blue within it. So you get a little bit of that green there. Paint to the edge of the paper, even though the matte will cover right here. This gives you an idea of the expansiveness of what's going on. And sometimes you might want to shift the matte a little bit and be like, oh, I like this better. So this is foliage that's popping up front. I could put Payne's gray in it now to darken it and kind of give it that popping feeling up front. But what we're going to have to do is do a dry off and then start modeling these rocks. You could progressively paint as it dries in some cases. That's always fun to do as well. Oh, somebody in the live stream said they forgot to write down the YouTube name. My YouTube name is Andrew Broussard Watercolors. I actually have a piece of paper that I wrote that down on, so I think you could see that right there, hopefully. Andrew Broussard Watercolors. I'm going to do a dry off. Oh, you're welcome. So if you have earbuds on, just be careful. Okay, so you can check for dryness with the back of your hand. We're not super dry, but you know, for video's sake, we'll say it's dry. You can get a little bit of dispersion with it. I'm gonna get this water out the way. This is something that I don't generally do. I don't usually do water with the waves and whatnot in it, and this is catching a lot of light. So the idea that I'm going to do is just try to put in, I probably have to wet it a little bit, a dry brush of ultramarine blue. So essentially, I need to get a textured effect like that. This is Arches paper, rough, so it's going to have a little bit more texture on it. Okay. So I'm just being very timid with this. One of the things is as you paint, you'll start having more of a repertoire of things and stuff stuck in your head. Like I said, this is something that I'm not super familiar with, but you start getting ideas how you could go about approaching it. So rather than looking at it as waves, I'm looking at it as ripples of light and how to get that effect through it. Okay, so I'm just darkening up the horizon line of water. There's a rock or two in here. There's a little bit of rocks out in here, so I could take just some probably Payne's Gray or something like that. I just don't want to feed it into the wet because then it'll disperse a little too much and lose its effect. Some rocks. So hopefully it'll all come together as we add everything else in. So, lighthouse and the building, and then we'll start focusing on all this interesting stuff. With buildings, I believe the red roofs, a lot of people will take a light red oxide and the raw sienna to kind of get a terracotta color for roofs. So we're in here, we want to play around with the line. Now, one thing that's a little weird about this picture that I need to explain is the top of this first building is in line with this horizon line. Personally, that's something that I am going to offset because I don't think it works like artistically. I want that slight. So that's the top of that roof. This one's going to be back here. There's a roof right here. And I'm going to feed colors into it and play around with it differently in a moment. It kind of comes in front of the lighthouse. Got this other building. Just kind of looking at the tops of them. They are darker in the picture, so like I said, we'll feed some stuff in. I'm going to leave it like that right now. I'm going to grab some ultramarine just to continue this line back here. Just to make it interesting. All right, I'm going to use that ultramarine grayish color for the lighthouse. So lighthouse comes up, comes in. Ultramarine, raw sienna, darken it, feed that in, get some variety in it. And it's going to have this side that's closest to us is going to have the shadow, and it's going to be lighter on this side, catching some of the light from this direction. My last name is Broussard. Broussard. Let's see. So we have that. This color is also going to be the face of these buildings, so I'm just going to throw that in there as well. So this is the face us. We have it darker back there. I unfortunately can't type in the chat right now. I only have it open up on my phone, and I have the camera picture opened up on the Kindle. But I need to have an alternative way to be able to communicate with y'all in the group messages so that I can respond real time and with typing. So let's continue our way up this lighthouse. A little bit of Payne's Gray. We have that walk around it. Then we do have another interesting spots here that come around, and that's the light, and this is the kind of top of the light. So I'm just modeling it with these guys. And I can throw Payne's Gray along this backside to darken it even more, add some more interest to it, help work that shape out of that walk around it. Let's leave it around like that for right now. Okay. Okay, so we have the... Oh, somebody subscribed to the YouTube. Thank you. All right, ultramarine. Okay, so we're going to work on this land now. Ultramarine, raw sienna. Kind of gives me a gray. I'm going to create the texture and the outline here. The Hake brush is kind of wild right now, so that'll help us out. So perspective-wise, it comes closer to us. So in general, in the picture, this line, even though it's coming closer, is going to get bigger up in this fashion. And then down here comes bigger like that. So you see that kind of concept taking place of it being a triangle perspective-wise. So we're texturing this in. Then I can grab raw sienna, burnt sienna. With the ultramarine, all crazy, to get a little bit darker. Oh, this is a little too brown. So if we need to, some Payne's Gray in it. And this is for the size of the rocks that are facing us. I'm just using a crazy wild hake right now where it's mostly dry and frayed. Okay. Now up here it's dark as well. I'm having trouble making out the other structures on it, but we have some darks that go across rock-wise, and then we have some greens for, I believe, grass and whatnot, and little trees. So we'll put those darks in, and then we'll feed in some greens in a moment. Let me get this super crisp. You can get more Payne's Gray and build up some of these darks as well. almost this whole face. Now the Chinese have a brush stroke for rocks and whatnot. I haven't done it in a long time. You take a stiffer haired brush, and they call it the axe stroke, I think, and it's a sideways stroke. It's kind of like what I do with the rigger, so I'll show it to you once we do a dry off. It's like a dry brush effect with it. Let's get a green. So I'm just grabbing some lemon yellow, and that's going to go in up in here. This is for some of the foliage taking place. And I can start putting this in as a texture for darks up front. All right. Let's move back to the Lighthouse. I use that light red oxide, and I use the raw sienna mixed into it to get a terracotta color, but it's a little too light. So I'm going to take ultramarine and mix that and darken it. And here's our result. Then this side of the building is super dark. Some of the structures around it. Oh, I caught some paint right there on my finger. Let's see if I can clean that up. There you go. Lift it right out. It's got Payne's gray to just blacken this side. And this face is dark. I'm not really doing a great job of shaping these guys, to be honest. So let's move to another spot. If something's not working for you, you move around. Okay, so this is the rigger with Payne's gray, and I'm coming down sideways, and that gives us a textural effect as well of rocks and a cliff face. I'm going to accentuate the dark spots with this one. So we're building up our darks. I gotta make sure I don't fling paint onto this one since the sky is so clear. Working with this angle, working this up and over. And now it starts coming towards us. Lemon yellow, get a green, put in some greens along this edge. There's some spots where it almost would be a pretty clean lemon yellow. Let's play around with that right there. We have trees right in here that we'd start putting in. Let that tree line work its way off and back around. Okay, let's do this front area. Then we'll do a dry off and see if there's anything I could fix up in here. See what y'all think. All right, let's lemon yellow. We have some parts that come up. So I had some of those effects there. You can use the rigger to put these, I guess, I don't even know what type of plant that would be. Okay. Variety of hake textures for this foreground. Ultramarine to get blues and darken it. Payne's gray to get the darks and the textures. Okay. Now do a dry off up here and see what we can do with it. I think what might work best is I'm going to take a dark Payne's gray. Let's put a few birds in. This is actually something me and David Usher talked about a year or two ago with a lighthouse type scene. Was that the skies could be empty and you could have, put some birds in and make it a little bit interesting. Let's darken this part of the lighthouse, backside, and that light at the top of it. Here's the railing. I'm not trying to cover up exactly what's there. I'm just trying to add to it, give it a little bit more variation. This is that piece that goes around. There's a window down here. This building comes out. Okay. This building has window. This one, I cannot see the building, so I'm darkening that up. This guy has windows right here, so I'm going to have to fix this edge for it. These windows might be a little too big, so you can blot, put it back in. Here's the way this one sits up, like that. And then it rolls back. A little too cramped. This one has a window up here, it has a few windows, so I cramped it up a little too much, so I missed some of the windows. Right there. I think that might be the best way to do that. And then darken this side a little bit more, put in a little bit more shadow. Okay, now Payne's gray. Looking at these rocks, I'll give that side brush effect. I can lift things and add textures. We can darken our darks. But I don't want smooth lines. I want it to be textured. This may help create that curvature right there, come out and down, as if we have the edge of that cliff right there. And then it goes around. Okay, so things aren't perfectly lined up in this painting, but it's giving the illusion of it, you know. So this gives me that flat, or at least the part you could walk on, hopefully. And then it gives us the drop, which you don't want to walk on. Texture in some flowers. We're pushing it toward the end where we should start wrapping it up. Add variety. Stand up and take a look. You could darken some of these areas as a artistic license to soften and bring the eyes in more. But for the most part, I think this may be as far as we can push this one, going fast and loose without feeling like we're overworking it. We can put in little accents on the rocks down here, and textures in the water. And there's just rigger lines right there. Payne's gray. Accent some of the surf and whatnot. All right, let me dry it off and we'll sign it and I'll take a photo and I'll show you in a mat. I'll show it to you in a mat. So as I wrap this up, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. Thank you, Miss Barbara, for posting this picture on Ron Rants and Disciples as a challenge for us to paint. And thank you for allowing me to film my process of your photo. It was fun. It was a great change of pace. And it's always good to have different things in your bag of tricks, different things to paint. It's very easy to, you find your style, but it's very easy to get complacent. So this was a lot of fun. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me pop out back so you could all see, and I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day. Bye.